periods of like self-reflection kind of sprinkled throughout to let you process things on your own time, not just externally and outwards as well. So maybe we'll start on that note. We'll start with a reflection question, and then I'm going to pass it over to this incredible panel who I'm so excited to have you listen to their amazing wisdom. So our first reflection question is, what does disruption in my area of impact look like? And before we jump into that, I also mentioned this concept yesterday. There's a Japanese principle called ikigai. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but ikigai. Thank you, Barb. She is our Japanese expert after. No, we've had this discussion about. So this notion actually parallels a lot of what Tim was speaking to today in his opening keynote around the sweet spot. Ikigai, probably still saying it wrong, is that sweet spot of intersection between passion, mission, profession, vocation, what you love and what you're paid for. So in essence, you kind of ask yourself what the world needs, what can you be paid for, what are you good at, and what do you love? And maybe in the center of all those things, that could be your area of impact. So let's all just take a quiet moment to reflect on what does disruption in my area of impact look like? All right, so we're going to hear from this amazing panel. When you're listening throughout the entire thing, think of how you can apply their learnings and insights to your own situation. I don't just want you, like my colleague Sergio often talks about mental kinesiology, just this mental practice but not doing anything with it. I want you to apply these learnings in some way at home, at your workplace, or in your community. So constantly think of bridging these concepts into your own personal life. So on that note, let's get this party started. I'm going to ask, I hate doing the one by one, but we're going to start it off this way, and then we're going to mix it up a bit. Maybe we'll start with you, Rob. We're going to start with, who are you, and why should anyone care about anything that comes out of your mouth?
Honestly, that's the answer is they really shouldn't. My name is Rob. I'm a co-founder at Fresh Roots. We are a mobile, we're a mobile grocery store service that brings, I used to say healthy and affordable prices to communities that have barriers accessing it, but somebody was introducing me to somebody else the other day, and they did a way better job of describing what we do than I ever have, and they said that we bring competitive prices and dignity to communities across Alberta.
Nice.
And it gives a lot better snapshot of what we do, because it's about being competitive. We're not trying to be a social service. And providing prices that are competitive but still prices and with margins, and allowing people to have choice and bringing a solution to them and meeting them where they are, not asking them to come to us. And why you should care. My background's in environmental engineering, and then I got into zero waste consulting. So I knew nothing about food, and I started on this journey last summer, just as like a fun thing to do once a night, and then, once a week, one night a week, and just the community voice that came out of the woodworks when we started this project was amazing, and just the amount of people who have just come up to me and said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. How do I help?" And so my journey has been leveraging the resources that are in our community to do the most that we can for the communities that we work with. So we're just trying to listen to our community partners and listen to the people who are out there and come up with solutions for them. So that's kind of what we've been trying to do for the last year and a bit now.
Awesome, great start. I'm going to pass it over to Joy next, and you have heard Adam speak about Meticulon during the panel discussion that he led with the Be Local Award winners. Meticulon, in my opinion, is one of the most undersung heroes in Calgary. And when I had to put this panel together, I was like, we got to get Meticulon here today. And I'm so thrilled to have Joy here. So Joy, who are you and why should we care about you?
Well, I'm honored. I'm Joy Hewitt, and I'm with Meticulon / auticon Canada. So 6 years ago, we started this really humble little business with a belief that people with autism could knock it out in the IT field. We did a lot of research. We started with a great grassroots little get-together of parents who are looking for ways for their adult children to be fulfilling their needs of working, and wanted to start researching out where that fit might be. And we came along, my CEO Garth and I, and we did a lot of research, and we found the IT field was a fit. And then we had to prove it. And we had to prove it in our nice little Meticulon company here in Calgary, and we did. And for the last 6 years, we felt very successful at what we were doing and supporting a nice handful of people with autism. We have about 45 consultants that are working in businesses throughout Calgary, including our lab where we run remote contracts as well. And then in June, we were acquired by an international company called Auticon. So now we're also Auticon Canada. We've merged and also kept Meticulon aspects separate. So we're nonprofit, for-purpose, social enterprise, along with a for-profit arm. And with that combination, Auticon Canada is allowing us to go beyond even our wildest dreams as Meticulon. So we've already opened a sister site in Montreal. We're about to open another one in Toronto, and hopefully next year in Vancouver. We're also expanding. So besides just software testing and development, now we're doing cybersecurity and a few different aspects that are helping us grow as a business as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you, Joy. Thank you. And so when I had to put a panel together, I also think it's painful when the panel is just regurgitating what the previous person said. And so I knew I had to have a diverse panel. And this is where Mr. Diversity comes in. Jared is a powerhouse, and he started up this amazing restaurant. Jared, who are you, and why should we care about you?
So my name is Jared, and I'm the founder, co-owner, and co-operator of the Allium Worker Cooperative. While perhaps somewhat of a heterodox opinion in this crowd, we are an anti-capitalist worker-owned restaurant. For the sake of simplicity, because there's a lot of emotion and feeling around these terms, we understand capitalism as nothing more than somebody appropriating value produced by others. Through creating a co-owned, worker-owned, and operated space, we start to erode some of those power imbalances and what I believe are inherent economic issues in our current society. I have a graduate degree studying issues of economy, and this cooperative was kind of the application of that understanding. Basically we're just looking at trying to show the world that there's a different way of doing business, that the McCarthy era of socialism is not really the way we understand things anymore. The world can start looking at work and economy in a different way, and I guess we're part of that cohort of people who believe that and are kind of trying to make that charge in the world today.
Awesome, very cool. So, incredible panel. Jared, I'm going to keep hanging out with you for a couple of seconds here. We actually all got together for coffee just to kind of get backgrounds on one another and get to know each other a little bit better. What was supposed to be an hour session, I think we were there pretty much till dinner time. It would turned into a 3-hour conversation just because there was so much passion and philosophy in our conversation. The one thing that I noticed with all three of you was that each of you leverage business structure in a different way, and it's also tied into how you disrupt. So Jared, can you maybe speak to your business model and how that's connected to your disruption?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I should preface this by saying that worker cooperatives are not a new idea, especially here in Alberta. Worker cooperatives have a long tradition in the settlement of the prairies, the settlement of the West. Farmers sort of relying on each other and working cooperatively was the bedrock of Alberta. It's something that we've all seemed to have forgotten about. Our structure is absolutely human-powered, and we believe, I sort of call this a humanization project more than anything. We feel like it's a bit of a social experiment, but if we look at sort of the facts of basic income inequality, I think it's plain for all of us to see that there are some fundamental issues, mostly for the working class. The rise in inflation proportionate to the rise in wages have been relatively stagnant since the 70s. Houses are fundamentally debt dependent nowadays. When you look at, statistics are problematic in any sense, but if you look at poverty statistics in Canada, for instance, About 5 million Canadians around are in poverty. That's a huge number, 5 million people. 1 in 5 children. And then when you break that down to racialized lines, half of First Nations people, for instance, their children are living in conditions of poverty. I think in a nation as wealthy and as powerful as Canada, there's no excuse to have that level of poverty. And this is not just something that happens. The economy is a social structure. It's a human structure. These things are made through human direction and human action. So what I really want to do is ground sort of my understanding of these issues in something that was practical. How do you not just sit here and complain about things? How do you actually make a difference and start to look at these issues? And what I really believe in is the power of people and building up workers, making workers the controllers of their own value, their own jobs, empowering them to feel like they have purpose in this world, and that creates all sorts of ripple effects throughout society. Sorry, I'm sort of going off on a tangent a bit, but things like local multiplier effects increase substantially when you increase the spending power of the middle class. People invest locally in their own communities. Capital is offshored less. Really, what you do is you make a benefit for the entire economy when you invest in working class people. So the worker cooperative model allows for that. Basically, or maybe I should do a quick breakdown on co-op models. I don't know if people are familiar with them all, but there's kind of 3 major models of cooperatives. One is the consumer co-op, so co-op or MEC, for instance. The second model is the one that we do, which is the worker cooperative. So basically, the owners are the operators are the owners. In our model, people have to pass a 3 to 6 month probationary period, at which point they have the option to buy into the restaurant and become full owners. The buy-in has been set at $5,000, which is a goal to be class inclusive, quote unquote. It's a relatively small number to own a restaurant, but actually it's a shit ton of money for a lot of people. I must have met with close to 40 people over the last 6 to 7 months. People ranging from 16-year-olds to people in their late 50s, professionals, immigrants, all sorts of folks. And many of them could not pay $5,000 to invest in this business. To them, it was all they had. These are all working class people, but it really starts to speak to the issues we have in the economy. We have this notion that anyone can bootstrap themselves and just lift themselves up. But for many people, that's not a reality at all. So by pooling the capital, the social capital, the intellectual capital of working class people, worker cooperatives allow workers to begin to have a form of modified business ownership. For us, that's rooted in ethics. We are committed to prioritizing our workers, prioritizing the local economy, and starting to really help people develop skills necessary to be functioning members of society.
Awesome.
And then maybe just one piece is we do have some staggered sort of payment plans with people. We're trying to work with different people to buy in. Some people who really want to be involved but don't have that money. So worker cooperatives, in contrast to a traditional hierarchical capitalist structure, allow for workers to get involved because instead of just prioritizing profit, we are prioritizing people. So we are willing to forego profit to an extent. Obviously, we need to be a sustainable business first and foremost, but we are willing to forego profit to help people become involved and start taking control of their lives.
Awesome.
I don't know if I answered that question. Sorry.
No, that was amazing. And that's why we had a 3-hour coffee session, because we all geeked out and listened to one another, and yeah, everyone here has such a wealth of information, so thank you so much, Jared. And I don't think you mentioned the third type of co-op.
Right, sorry, the third type of co-op, so we have the consumer co-op, the worker co-op, and then just a hybrid model, which is basically those two come together.
Awesome, perfect. Joy, we're going to switch gears just a little bit, but also talk about your structure. Joy, if there's one thing that Meticulon does in community, what is it? So we know that it provides employment contractors who are on the spectrum with opportunities to make money, but what do they do in community, would you say?
I would say one of the most important aspects that we do is to create awareness and hopefully open some minds to an alternative way of not only looking at your business, but looking for your business to succeed by using our consultants. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Jared was saying as well, with offering opportunities to people who otherwise might not have had them. We're also seeing a change of quality of life for our consultants. And there's, I think the Center for Disease Control's last stats came out that there's 1 in 64 or something along that line, but it's an older report that came out. The last Autism Speaks report showed it was closer to 1 in 45 people have autism, are being diagnosed with autism, which means that much closer. And the people that I speak to, there's not a 6 degree of separation. It's usually a 1 or 2 degree, and you know someone or someone in your family who's impacted by autism. And autism is a spectrum, so it's vast and has a lot of different challenges within each aspect of it. For the people that we work with who are higher functioning and that part of it, they're all employable, yet 83% of people who are employable and on the spectrum are underemployed or unemployed. And part of that is just because it's not a visible diversity. A lot of places are hiring, they want to be seen as, look at our diversity abilities, and with autism it's not as noticeable. I think the second one is for people with autism, it's a tough challenge to get past the initial interviews, and part of that is because of their honesty and often literal mindedness. So here's an example. One of our consultants was asked, how did you find your last job? Even though we suggest that our business clients don't ask soft questions, but how did you find your last job? And he said, Google Maps. But the interviewer wasn't prepared for that kind of answer and was ready to write them off. And that's part of where Meticulon comes in, or Auticon Canada, and then as translators, help our consultant to see what the real question was, or help the business client to see what a great answer this was, and things like that.
Awesome.
Is that going to answer your question?
100%. Can you quickly also touch on, like you mentioned, you've got 2 arms, one's nonprofit, one's for-profit, and how that helps you create the impact you want to see in the world?
Good question. Unfortunately and fortunately at the same time, there are different avenues that are available depending on whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit, including funding, which is a main source of resources for agencies like ours. And we are #1 a consulting agency, and trying to keep the lights on is from our own profitability, first and foremost. But we also rely on funding for things like continuing research, or we're developing a software program right now for assessing employability skills for youth with diverse abilities, and that's another monumental expense. So it opens different doors, and we're lucky enough to have both arms available to us so that we can have those opportunities, and again, then give back to the autism community.
Amazing. And so we're hearing from 2 different models, and I think this is a perfect segue to Rob and hearing about Fresh Roots. And you actually spoke about this during the coffee session, just how you landed on the structure you landed on and why you chose to do that one.
Yeah, so initially we were called the Community Mobile Food Market, which was a project under another local organization called Leftovers, which is a food waste reduction and food recovery actually at the time it was a non-profit, and so we fall of last year we'd been growing the Community Mobile Food Market, and we're starting to see some serious momentum behind it. And then Leftovers got charitable status, and now we had an earned income activity. And for anybody here who's involved with charity, you have to have what are called registered charitable objectives, which are very constrictive. The CRA hasn't updated that in forever, I think, and so I mean, like, really at Leftovers, our main goal was to keep good food out of landfill, and then we found that the best thing that we could do with it was, find people who could use it. So that was service agencies, and then they're like, well, that's to reduce poverty, and so literally says the words reduce poverty in our registered charitable objectives, just so that we can get charitable status. Even though that's a gross, it's way more complex than that. You can't just take food waste and throw it at people who are hungry. But that's what our objective sounds like. And so we ended up getting charitable status, and so we had to move this earned income activity, either pivot it or change it or find something, because it didn't align with food waste reduction or food waste recovery for poverty reduction. And so we had to go through this process, and I came up with 10 different ways we could do it, using financial agents and like all kinds of things. So I wanted to leverage the fact that we had a registered charity to benefit both projects. And then I had a bunch of lawyers tell me no a bunch of times until I had to like just register a new organization. It was really the only option we had. If we wanted to keep, unless we wanted to take a year or more, which it takes over a year to change your charitable objectives. So if we wanted to keep things rolling, which we did, we could only register a new organization. And then around that time, I did an amazing 2-day workshop with Sean Loney, who's the keynote speaker, and for everybody here, I highly recommend going and talking to him. And I was like, no, I have all these brilliant ideas, and Sean was like, you're gonna be a nonprofit. I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm gonna figure this out. And he's like, no, you're gonna be a nonprofit. And after banging our head on the wall for about 3 months, we're like, yep, we're gonna be a nonprofit. And the model never changed. The model was always set up the exact same way. Like I said, it's a for-profit model. It's a social enterprise model, but why we had to be a nonprofit is because if you want to work with the big players in your system, being a nonprofit makes it 1,000,000 times easier. So if we wanted to partner with the city and the Transit Authority and U of C and Bow Valley College and Mount Royal and like all these massive organizations, those conversations started off 1,000,000 miles further than when they would have been because we were a nonprofit. Didn't care about our model, didn't care about our impact, didn't care about anything. Legally, how are you registered? Nonprofit. Great, awesome, free everything. Perfect, right?
Yes, please.
You don't want to know more about what we do? No, you can set up here for free. Great, you're a nonprofit? Awesome. So it's about leveraging the potential of what you want to do, and so being a nonprofit opened that door for us, and so now we have the ability to play in both worlds and leverage grants to do projects and to grow faster than we could ever. Like that pressure isn't on our operations to generate all of this profit, which when you're competing with Walmart is tough. Like price wise, I mean they've been in the game for a while and they know what they're doing, and so it's like to compete with them is tough. So there's not a huge pressure for us to generate, and we don't really want to be generating model like profit handover. That's not what we want. We want it to be a service that is self-sustainable. We want to build a service that is not going to go away if the funding train stops. It will always be there, but then we just leverage grants and other resources and whatever we can get our hands on to just do more.
Love it. Very cool. Thank you. And so on this topic of disruption, I think one of the things that a lot of the panel has in common is kind of how they actually see the world and how they see the people, the stakeholders that are impacted by their work. During our initial coffee session, like what turned me into a for sure fanboy of Jared was he talked about his co-op being about empowering humans. And so I was hoping you could touch on that a little bit, because it was really beautiful to hear like the full extent of it's not just a job and it's not just ownership, like it's so much more, it's transformational. So if you could, get this room up to speed on that concept.
Yeah, I think maybe I could use this handy analogy that I shared with you when we were there earlier, and it's often how I think you're when you're trying to make any kind of change, you kind of have to think about what your final goal is, I suppose. When we look at issues of poverty, for instance, and human empowerment, I think that there's two major camps that we generally approach this from. There's the sort of notion of social care, and there's the notion of social change. An analogy that I'm going to use, I guess, is sort of this idea of somebody gashes their leg, for instance, and they have to go and see a doctor. And they go to the doctor and they say, oh shit, doctor, I hit myself and I'm bleeding everywhere. And the doctor, she's like, oh God, what did you do? And she starts sewing him up, turns him around, kicks him back outside. And this poor bastard walks back outside and walks right into this stupid table that was right there and cuts his leg again and walks back in. And the doctor's like, oh God, what did you do again? And she puts the Band-Aid back on and sends him back out. And he keeps hitting this table time and time again. In this story, the doctor and the Band-Aid is social care. And that's super important. Social care is fundamental. If someone is bleeding, if someone has a wound, it needs to be attended to, it needs to be prepared, they need to be healed. But at some point, we have to start doing the heavy work of moving that table. And this to me is about real meaningful empowerment, about real meaningful social change. So for us, the co-op operates on these two forms. The social care is definitely, it's about meaningful work, I suppose, but less so. It's more about like creating a space where people feel comfortable and they can come and they can have a job that they don't hate necessarily. The social change piece for us is more about making people feel like they are in power of their own lives and that they are respected and that they are smart and that there is really like an untold potential in them. And whether you believe it or not, if you create a condition where this is sort of how everyone operates, interacts with each other, it's so amazing what people start to do. So I've sort of gotten a little distracted on my story here, I guess, but the point being that sort of by believing in people and not having these hierarchical roles, we start to create meaningful forms of work and engagement. When you come from, the restaurant industry is such a perfect example, because when you come from any traditional restaurant, it's super top down and people are made to feel like they're kind of just a cog and it's all about staying in your lane the whole time. It's like, this is your job, this is what you can do, just shut up and do it, don't think. People are micromanaged, it's super like, it's kind of like punitive if you fuck up, it's like you're gonna pay for that or this is your issue. In the restaurant structure, in the work structure that we've created, it is always first and foremost, you have the power to figure out what you want to do. If someone comes to me, because I sort of laid the seed for this, so oftentimes there's this sort of tacit, like maybe like, oh, the leadership role. I try to avoid that with the plague. If someone comes to me and they say like, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? I don't know, it's your business. What do you think? And it's crazy to watch people just sort of have a moment and be like, holy shit, this is my business. Like I can make this call, I can do these things. Mm-hmm. It is transformational. Yeah. I really believe it's transformational. And I've seen like, people who have never, I don't know, worked a line before come in and we're like, you can do this, like cook this, work this line. And they're crushing it. They're killing it every night. They're having fun. They're finding new talents they never knew they had. And they're excelling within a week or two. Like it's unbelievable when you empower people and believe in people. We hope that has all sorts of kind of ripple effects, as I mentioned before, and that's kind of that sort of goes on further with the social change aspect, which we have some other projects in the future that I won't share right now, but that I hope to keep kind of not exploiting, but using that human power to create some meaningful change.
You mentioned something during the coffee session that really resonated with me, and you had this metaphor for work as a love fling versus the hard work of marriage, which I thought it just drove home for me. Can you tell the group about that?
Kind of my partner's idea, which was really smart. I'll give her all the credit for that.
Cool.
That one there.
Who's your partner, by the way? Do you want to?
Sorry, also a co-owner.
Awesome.
But it was a really great analogy because she talks about the traditional structure of a capitalist job. You get a job somewhere. It could be really exciting to start, it's like the lust is there and you're like, oh my god, like I'm learning all these things and it's cool and exciting, but maybe a few months pass and the romance starts to fade a bit and then you start to see the issues in the job and then little fights start and sure enough at some point you're like, screw you, this is over, and you break up. A worker cooperative, by contrast, is a marriage. We are committed to understanding that there will be conflict and tension between all of us, but that we are committed to working through that conflict and tension. So we say in a traditional work structure, people break relationships. They end relationships when they're tough. We are committed to mending relationships at all times. And this is messy work. We're dealing with people. We're not just dealing with any people too. We're dealing with people who often have some difficult backgrounds. Maybe don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of self-empowerment because they've been raised in a condition that tells them that they're not worth it. So there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of drama. We're all people, we're all ego-based people, this is inevitable. But to sort of operate from a foundational belief that we will work through every issue has ultimately really led us to amazing group strength and group solidarity. And I'm not, many more issues on the horizon, many more, lovers' quarrels to get through, but we're committed and we come out stronger each time. So it's really cool to see that play out.
And the cool thing as well is that you actually host conflict resolution workshops to help work through these tough times.
Yeah, so we've done one so far. It was a consensus and conflict resolution seminar, and we're definitely looking at doing more. Again, it's about anticipating issues. It's not like this is going to be peachy keen, all these workers coming together to build their utopia together. It's like, no, this is shitty, tough, terrible work sometimes. But yeah, through sort of preparing ourselves and going to these kinds of educational seminars, we've been able to really just rise to that occasion.
I love that. It's way better than my approach of just pretending like you don't see them in the hallway and just avoid them at all costs. So awesome. So the organization that I work for is called Momentum, and we leverage what's known as an asset-based approach to community development. So instead of looking at deficiencies, we look at strengths, and we double down on strengths as a starting point for transformational change. When I first heard about Meticulon to me was like this social enterprise that embodied it on a whole nother level that was like put everyone to shame almost. It was incredible. And so, Joy, I'm wondering if you could speak to this notion of like viewing what other people see as a deficiency as an incredible strength and asset for the community.
The autism advantage, that's what we call it. And part of what our whole goal and mission was to find that business development that fits with the skill set that people with autism have innately. And that's where IT came in because of things like people with autism often have a keen eye for details. Their level of focus is amazing. I'm wowed daily on even intellectual levels and rote memory capacities and things like that, looking outside of the box. So every day I'm reminded of why the autism advantage is a great fit for the role of IT. But not just IT, this is just ours, but we're one step, we're one process where so many are needed. And so I think, and I'm going to sidestep here for a second just to give you an idea of the numbers here in Calgary. So if you're interested in working in IT, if you're employable, if you're motivated, and you're over 18 with an autism diagnosis, you can apply to us. And we get anywhere between 35 and 50 applicants every single time. Every single time we run a session, which we can take 7. That's just what we're equipped for. So we have to go through 50 applicants, 35 to 50 every single time. That's just in the Calgary area alone. We have an amazing amount of talent sitting here that's untapped, and a whole field that could use that sort of expertise and skill set that, because of things like fear, just aren't linking the two. And we're trying to be that bridge. Yeah. That's the part.
I love it. And so like, during our coffee session, Joy, you talked about how oftentimes people look outside the Calgary community for these resources, and it's like, lo and behold, it's in the backyard. Like,
right.
Can you speak to that? Yeah, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, part of what when we're approaching businesses for getting contracts is about hiring local. And although there's no discount for diversibility or disability or anything like that, we're going to be charging the same as our competitors. You're going to get the quality of work and supporting the local people to build and grow here within Calgary. So we hear a lot of ups and downs for people who outsource the work outside of even the country. And everyone's gung-ho in the beginning because it's so much cheaper. And usually, not always, but usually that business will contact us a few months later and say, yeah, that didn't work. So now they're going to take a look at ours. And our model includes a 1-month guarantee. So if any of our business clients aren't happy, or our consultants aren't doing at least what their coworkers are doing as far as getting the workload completed, then we pay for it if they don't. And so far in 6 years, we've not had to use that guarantee not once. So, and when the economy really fell through the basement a few years ago, some of our business clients had to let go of a lot of staff, but kept our consultants because they said they did the work of 2 or 3 of their other coworkers.
That's mind-blowing to me, right? Like, you've done with hundreds or thousands of customers and clients. Not one person has had to tap into that guarantee, and during difficult times, they're retained better than a typical employee.
Well, there's still difficult times.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge is just getting contracts. Now, the talent, it's all over the place, but getting the contracts.
And again, this is all rooted and grounded in an employee base that a lot of people wouldn't want to even touch or consider. And so, again, just the idea of really focusing on assets and strengths within a community, providing so many economic solutions. I think it's such a beautiful example, so thank you.
There was research that showed about 60%, I believe, of employers are fearful of accommodations. They're afraid they're going to get it wrong, they're afraid of the expense. So working with an agency like ours, if a company is thinking about employing someone with autism, can be really helpful.
Yeah.
But the reality is those accommodations are usually minimal or totally worth it.
Yeah.
Depending what they are.
And so, like during our coffee session, you were also exploring about building the capacity of other organizations. Like, yeah, do you want to touch on that really quickly?
Part of our philosophy is to also help people to build and embrace neurodiversity. And of course, diversity is important from every aspect, but I think neurodiversity is one that's not mentioned as often. So sometimes it happens organically by working with us. Every one of our consultants has a job coach, or we call them employment coordinators, because they're doing more than just coaching. They're helping the whole marriage between the business client as well as helping with our consultants to succeed. So those employment coordinators also check in with the business managers, who often ask coaching tips on things that have nothing to do with autism, but they're just seeking advice on things like communication skills, which are part of your managerial skills, not necessarily something I'm, as more of an autism expert, that I'm coming here to help you with. But since you're here, and so that I'm happy to help with that. So we find that the companies that are employing us are having better managerial skills, their communications better. They're even motivated by the amount of work that our consultants do, and they're opening their minds to the abilities of people with diversities and diverse abilities. And so even organically, that neurodiverse community is developing within our business clients' environments.
Amazing, very cool. So in addition to kind of seeing how these organizations have shifted how they view the community and stakeholders, Rob, when we had coffee, talked about this notion of always having lived experience as part of the discussion. And so, Rob, I'm curious to see how that's kind of influenced some of the decision-making of Fresh Roots, and because I know that you've been evolving a lot as an organization, and you're experimenting and iterating with lots of different concepts. Can you just speak to the community voice and how that's showing up in some of your business decision-making?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I mentioned, I didn't know anything. I came from zero waste, so I came into a world with marginalized populations, produce. I mean, try moving produce around in Calgary 50 out of 52 weeks out of the year. It's a tough climate. And in addition to all of this, like trying to build this system that was sustainable, and we were working with all these populations that I know nothing about, and the real life experiences that they face on a day-to-day. And I'm a privileged white male. Like, I have no idea what that's like. And so anybody who's done any work in this field will identify with what's called the imposter syndrome, where you're like, what do I know about this? And it hits you pretty hard when you're like, I don't know anything about any of these communities, and if I'm doing anything that have any meaning to them. And so that was like a pretty hard thing that we were always thinking about. And so thankfully we had some pretty sage advice starting on, where it's like, we don't go into any community unless we have a community partner who knows that community partner with us. Nice. And we form it as like a partnership. And so it's like, hey, we wanted to go into Bowness, but we just didn't just show up in Bowness. We called, we knocked doors, we took meetings until we found organizations, so Caria and Bow West and all these other organizations, and the CSW, the city social workers in that area. Before we launched there, we all sat down at a table and said, where can we go? What service can we do? What time are we going to be where? Like, how do we get the word out? Like, who does what? And I said, great, I have a service, and you guys do community. And you tell me how to make my service impactful in your community. Nice. And for your clients. And for that, that's kind of what we're always done. It's like, I mean, we just did a presentation for social venture partners. And we say, how do you go into a community where we don't know them and they don't know us? And I mean, First Nation community is a whole other ballgame where that's such a fine line that you have to, you know, trust is such an issue and such an importance of these communities. And if we just showed up and just started selling fruit on the side of the road in their community, then nobody would stop. And so we work with the health center, we work with local chief councils, we work with whoever we can to build that trust in the community. And as capacity is needed, my goal is to always say we run a one-staff operation, and I will be very reluctant to ever put a second staff on, or I always am very reluctant to have a second staff, because if that's an opportunity that I'd rather give to that community. It is so much more impactful when somebody from Morley comes up and somebody from Morley is running the till. Nice. Right? Like, our staff members unloading the truck and keeping things stacked, but most of the people that you're going to interact with during that shopping experience are other people who live in Morley. Awesome. And not our staff member. And so we push back on that a lot. We're like, no, we want to create these opportunities. We want to create more opportunities for those communities. Keep our model as lean as we can. Keep one staff on when we can. It has its challenges. But we're trying to build it for them. Like, awesome. I'm trying to build a service that is useful for other people. Cool. And I can't do that without them at the table. So we always ask them first.
Love it. Awesome. Super inspiring. At least I think so. Hopefully you do as well. Seen some head nods. Awesome. No one's falling asleep on me, I don't think. Let's switch into Q&A. But for those of you who were yesterday, you know, I think Q&A can suck. So let's make sure the questions don't suck. And in order to do that, it's a question, and it's not like a 10-minute personal reflection story. And then what do you think? Let's have the questions like serve some purpose to the larger audience. So on that intimidating note, who would like to start off the questions? Barb, thanks for being courageous. I have a question for Joy. How did you structure this in the beginning? How did you pay for this? Because you're training people.
Yes, great question. In the beginning, we had funding. So we had two funders, the federal government, as well as the Sneed Family Foundation. And the Sneed Family Foundation funded us by giving us space and time. And we couldn't be where we are today if we wouldn't have had free office space, like in a computer lab. Amazing, which they're still doing for us. I'm not sure how much longer they'll continue to, but we're grateful every day that we walk into our offices at the Sneed Family Foundation. And then the federal government gave us enough money to start. The funding decreased yearly, so we started off with the ability to get all our computers and do the research and get everything to place, build our toolkit, and then it was less and less and less every year until we just became self-sufficient.
Awesome. Good question.
My question's for Jared. Why did you choose the restaurant industry as a space to create co-op and a space to how has the restaurant industry notoriously like pretty terrible?
How long?
In all honesty, it's a practical decision. As I said, maybe I said this, I can't recall, but I hate restaurants. Like, I hate them. When I was sitting around my kitchen table with a few folks trying to talk about the worker cooperative model and the restaurant, I was still sort of 1 foot out of the restaurant being like, what else can we do? There's gotta be something else. Like, who knows how to make steel? Who can build, make tiles? Maybe we should make a tile factory. I was like, Mark's always talks about widgets. Like, what the fuck is a widget? But, myself, as many of the people I know have worked in the restaurant industry for a long time, we know it well. So as I say, it was just a practical decision, kind of. It was what we could do. And I'm actually, at the start, I was really reticent to sort of going down that industry road, but I'm really kind of happy we did it, because as you mentioned, like, the restaurant industry is notoriously exploitative. It's like really shitty to its people. It's totally this like eat them up and spit them out attitude. Everyone is replaceable, nobody matters. And it's all about that bottom line for that owner, the whole time. So I think it's such a cool thing that in this industry, we're starting to be like, hey, look, you don't have to be this way. In terms of the reception, I don't know exactly. I'm definitely starting to be in these circles a little more. I mean, the restaurant industry in Calgary is dominated by groups, these big corporate groups. They probably don't even care about us, in all honesty, like we're a blip on the radar. But there's definitely an uncomfortableness. There's like this uneasiness that I feel when I speak with some restaurateurs. that they're kind of like what are you, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what? You know, like, no, this is not for us. Like, this is, it's kind of a scary thing maybe. And I hope it is. Like, I hope it's uncomfortable for people, you know, because we're really trying to shed a light on an issue in working economy, and I think that is fundamentally uncomfortable. So we'll see what happens. But probably we're so small, and, you know, we're just doing our own little thing on the side that it doesn't really matter, but for them.
Awesome. Sorry, go ahead in front.
Also for Jared, just around, so you kind of talked about, you know, all of your different cultures across your companies, which when you're starting your own company, you kind of have the freedom to build your own culture. But how did you overcome that sort of industry culture? Because, you know, bringing people in with that experience, there's just so much, it's like you said, there's a lot of ego, but even just like tiny little differences between position, like a bartender versus a server, like you're really doing the same job, but it's like one position is higher. So how did you manage
Good
that?
question.
You know, I think it's really been the people that we've attracted, because you're right, and there's been some people that have come that are very much like industry minded. You know, they ostensibly love the idea of equity in pay. Like, we all get the same and it's great and this is how it should be. But then a few months in operations, kind of like, oh shit, no, I want my tips. Like, and they left, you know? So I think the model on the one hand has a natural tendency to weed out those who don't belong and attract those who do belong. But at the same time, we're so committed. Like, for instance, we brought on a chef of 20 years. And I said the first thing to him when he came on is I said, there are no chef egos allowed here. I said, you can try. If you bring that chef ego shit, you're out. Like, we're killing your chef ego. And he was committed. He's like, I want my chef ego to die. Like, you know, and it comes out sometimes. And it's like, check yourself. Like, and we're all, like, it's a group movement. We're all like, no, you check yourself. Like, go outside, take 5 minutes, and you come back when you're ready to be on the level, you know? Because we're non-hierarchical. That's our commitment. I think my company might have to.
Yeah.
One of the other things too is that our positions are rotating a lot. So a bartender actually might sometimes be a dishwasher. So it kind of breaks down those hierarchies that develop that are totally in restaurants, like you're saying.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Everyone is not, I would say obligated, but we would say committed maybe to doing at least one dish shift a month. Some people definitely have a tendency to be like more in their area of skill, but like a lot of us, like myself, like I'll do a dish shift, a bar shift, and I'll run the kitchen all in a week, you know. And so that kind of movement of skill and position really helps, I think, eradicate some of those hierarchies, as Laura said.
Awesome.
Question for Rob. I'm wondering how you guys are planning to scale your business, and also how are you planning to navigate like the winters when the roads aren't good and you have to take this bus?
Yeah.
And also if you guys are considering more rural communities and communities that maybe don't have access to fresh vegetables or fruits, and kind of what your thought process is there.
Yeah, that's what I think about on a daily basis. It's a tough challenge for us. I mean, we had the ability. We've been really fortunate that we've been just been really successful in a lot of endeavors when it comes to grants and pitch competitions and things like that. We've been able to generate some resources for us to invest, and I mean, we're just hustling wherever we can. So you know, doing that whole like bootstrap, don't spend $1, you don't have to kind of. I'm the worst for it. And so we partnered with Nutrient, for example, and came up with a 3-year partnership with them, and that was the funds. That's how I got the funds to build our bus. And then I'll go out and I'll find another opportunity, another thing, and just kind of find any way we can to create value for somebody else, that we can bring in resources to be able to invest in our operations. And so we've been running one really crappy truck for the last year, and we just bought a brand new one in Calgary and sent our crappy truck to Edmonton. So we got a brand new one in Calgary, and then we launched in Edmonton in October. And so I mean, it's more of like a lesson in starting anything is start as small as you can, and start with the littlest. I mean, we started off with a partnership with the city of Calgary. You had funding, which is great. I mean, I know Jared had to like put that idea on his back and like carry it for months, like in terms of like constructing the restaurant, like where those resources come from, and then you just kind of just build from there. And so now we have 2 trucks that we're trying to grow. So we're in 20 communities now across Alberta, and by, you know, I'm talking quarters now, but I should by the summer of next year we're aiming for about 50. Just growing our capacity in Edmonton, and then with the bus and keeping that on the road. We were having this conversation before this started, and I'm coming to this tough realization where it's like, I wanted to, part of the motivation for building that bus, and we went out and got an architecture firm to design the interior pro bono and to do all these other things, and it's like, if it's not done yet, but when it's done, it's going to be beautiful on the inside. And part of the intention of that was not a lot of people go out and build nice things for the communities that we work in, and so we wanted to build something nice for these communities that most people forget about. Those trendy new businesses, their demographic isn't the demographic that we work with, and they're building all, like, you know, these beautiful storefronts and all these beautiful things, and a lot of times that's not the case, and so we wanted to build something really nice for them. And I'm struggling to come to the realization that the bus is flashy and it's cool and people want to pay to put their name on it and that kind of stuff, and it brings that to the table. But in terms of using it effectively 52 weeks out of the year, it's really hard. It's really hard to take people who have never driven a bus and teach them to drive a bus, and in Calgary weather and in tight like corners. Like, people already hit stuff with our smaller trucks.
I think Pressures is like one of the coolest social care projects around. It's awesome.
That's it. And so, I mean, like, just there's so much liability and challenges that comes with it, but it's so cool. And so I want the cool, and I want to be able to do that to bring awareness of what we do. And I want to use it in the communities that we serve, because I want to bring them, like, look what we did. Like, thanks, because you supported us, because you shop with us every week, we were able to go out and build this. But the reality is, I just don't think I will. And that's tough. That's like a hard realization. I'm gonna try. We haven't tried it yet, so I'm gonna try first and make the informed decision. But we might just have to pivot it and use it for more public outreach and awareness and events and one-offs, and, you know, do the powwow circuit with it and stuff like that. So there's lots of opportunities to do good with it. I just wanted to use it as like a core piece, but. I mean, that bus is from 1998 and has over 1 million kilometers on it. Like, how do I reliably use that to offer a service that people need to rely on, versus a truck that I can build for the same cost that's from 2014? So it's a tough. You got to kind of take it one piece at a time. But we're gonna figure it out. I'm gonna strap Jared in that bus and see what he does.
Awesome. So.
Can I say, like, the winters they're tough. Like, I worked last winter with Fresh Roots, and like, you know, it's cold. Like, I mean, obviously it's cold, but it's like, it's tough work. Like, we're unloading full markets into, like, I do all the public housing units, so into like community rooms, and like, it's a bunch of work. It's like -30 out. It's crappy, but, you know, I'm always like, we're like the male folks. Like, we'll be here with rain or shine. Like,
nice.
You know, and people are always super stoked when they see you pull up, and it's like, you put in that hard work. Like, it's super appreciated in all these communities. So
that,
it's worth it.
Yeah, there's a piece there, and it ties into what Jared, and it's like making sure people are there for the cause and not there for themselves. And it's like, I saw Obama talk, and that was his biggest thing. My biggest takeaway from his whole thing was, like, when they brought on people, he said, you are here for the cause, you are not here for the job. Like, you're not here to serve yourself. This is not something that's gonna, like, be a stepping stone in your career, and that's not your intention. You're here because you believe in what we're trying to do. And if our staff didn't believe in that, nobody would do what we asked them to do.
Well, I'm not going anywhere with Fresh Roots.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, I mean, you have to have that buy-in from your staff. I mean, and over time, we're getting better at handling that winter and setting up, like, how we do those things. But doing anything like that in this weather is tough. So a lot of that burden ends up on your staff, and them just being like, believing in what you're doing, because if they didn't believe in it, they would just go work indoors somewhere.
Yeah, they're good.
Like a restaurant.
So, interesting little fact, these two gentlemen met at Thrive. Thrive has an annual event called their Community Huddle. They actually met at Thrive's Community Huddle last year at the public library, and through that connection, that's how Jared started working for Rob. So it's all about, so part of the Community Huddle that is now merged into being part of the Soul the Next Economy Forum is helping turn ideas into reality. And that happens through intersections of different people coming together and exploring new ideas. And so part of me turning the panel on its head is there's wisdom in the room. There's not just wisdom at the front of the room, there's also wisdom in the room. And so with a show of hands, who here in the room is working on some form of disruption in their own lives? All right, perfect. Love it. So we've got a little period of self-reflection. So I want us all to reflect on our own disruption. Think about all the amazing things, all the inspiration that we've heard from these incredible 3 individuals. Think of applying any of those learnings to your own situation. I'm going to have 1, possibly 2, probably just 1 person come up, and you're going to have the opportunity to workshop your disruption with everyone in this room. So everyone in this room will be an asset to you. And I did this to the panel yesterday to kind of talk about this asset, and I'm going to throw you guys under the bus, figuratively. The panel yesterday agreed to meeting everyone one-on-one if they wanted to. If you're open to it, could we put that resource out there to everyone in this room as well? You have no choice. Awesome. So we're talking assets. We're talking about being in service to one another. So we're going to take 2 minutes to reflect on our own personal areas of disruption and impact we're trying to create in Calgary. Take 2 minutes of silent time to think on that. And then I'm going to ask someone who's courageous enough to come take my seat and leverage the amazing assets in this room to turn their idea from concept to reality. All right, 2 minutes starting now.
Guys, they do a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah.
Hook them up.
That same skill set
Yeah.
applied to that.
We actually trained somebody to work with
Yeah. Because now it's like numbers and tech. That's where it's like
Absolutely,
accounting is
yeah.
going. Like everything's automated. And so
Yes.
it's like automated accounting systems. Like perfect. That's just bread and butter right there.
Love it.
Yeah. And so he's gonna pitch it, and if he gets into leaders tomorrow.
Oh, I forgot I'm shaming people who are leaving early. Shame the pastor. Shaming the pastor. All right. So we probably have time for 1 person, and then we're going to have a quick wrap-up activity. Who here would love to workshop their idea, tap into the expertise at the front and the rest of the room? I know a lot of you in this room. I can call you out by name.
Just wait them out, Phil.
I will.
Just wait them out. I'll try it. Yes.
Yeah? Let's do it, Wade.
Hello, guys.
So Wade, maybe we'll use your 5 minutes, like 1 minute, 2 minutes tops to describe your situation, and then we'll open it up.
So I have a health consultancy called Surge Knowledge, CK Health for short. There's 3 different streams, but the one where I think the most disruption could be in as a patient support specialist. So I'm lifting out meaning from individual's health journey, and there are different steps that you can try to, or different tasks that you could do. So basically trying to find the individuals what they find important in their journey, and I want to draw out like a part of their journey, or I can draw out a part of their journey, and try to figure out certain things to do with like if they have confusion around stuff in their health record and stuff like that. So that's how I see a patient support specialist. The idea, it mostly comes from Ontario around nurses, and there's a couple like similar positions like patient navigators in the cancer cancer section of healthcare. So I'm just, so
What's your ask of the group? How can this group help you out?
So I'll have to engage with different patient populations. So I know patient populations in Calgary, but let's see. Maybe not so much on the front end as the back end. Maybe just creating an efficient system process, I guess. So I didn't think of the question. Shoot.
Yeah, please.
Can you describe like the impacts? It's like if you were wildly successful, and it's like what's the change? Like what's the delta that you want to see? So you capture these stories, and then what's the change with that?
I think the biggest delta or change with the individual would understand more than they do now from the system. The system doesn't really get any understanding. So the understanding of, like, integrative understanding of their situation and journey through the system.
So is it building a roadmap? Is that what you're
And
wanting
shared
to do?
knowledge.
Yeah, there would be a roadmap.
Is it almost like a coaching model where you're trying to facilitate or help somebody that's in that situation to A, understand what they're going through, B, understand the system,
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
C, get whatever external supports may need for the non-medical pieces of the changes they're going through, so you're almost trying to be like a coordinator or a coach?
Yeah, it would be a coordinator and coach. Yes.
I see a disruptor piece, maybe. And this is, again, my own shit, sorry,
Yeah.
but our healthcare system is obviously really reactive, right?
Yeah.
So oftentimes you get these people that come in and they're getting help for an issue that's probably already too late or something that should have been addressed on the front end. Is there a way in which you can help push recipients of medical care to begin looking at the way to be proactive in health, for instance, by addressing more maybe psychological issues, trying to have more control over their financial and social empowerment, like all these things? Like, is there a way that you can try to help, instead of coming on the far end, you're just helping people navigate this world, it sounds like, which is great. Maybe there's a way to help them navigate the world, but then also position them to be at the forefront of those issues. I don't know. It's just trying to
Yeah.
figure out there.
Yeah, it's navigation and coaching and trying to see where they want to, like from where they are, where they want to go. So
Right.
it is a core coaching type of process.
It sounds like there might be an opportunity to then analyze this data, this journey that they've been on, to kind of get to, are there any key points across all of these different clients that I'm working with, and you see these common failures, and then you can go and address those root causes so that more people don't have to travel down this journey.
So like the crumbs or waypoints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, all these people experienced this here, so we need to look at that and see what can we do about that, or who needs to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, that's good. Good way to yeah, that's a good good point.
Awesome.
For sure.
Maybe Mel, if you got your hand up, we'll end with your comment.
Yeah, for a couple of real life examples so I have a family member who has been through the healthcare system here in Calgary. The healthcare system, the best way to describe it in terms of our experience is the people are really committed to doing a good job to help their patients, but the system is extraordinarily complex to understand when you're on the outside. And even the people on the inside have trouble understanding how everything is interconnected. And I remember having a conversation around if there was somebody we could call or a website we could go on where we could say, we have a family member with this health issue and they're 15 years old. So they're under the pediatric. Where do we start? Like, who can we meet with to explain to us how this whole process works? And there really wasn't. There was lots of information online, but it was extraordinarily time-consuming and confusing, and you'd spend days sometimes looking at all these different websites, and at the end of it, you knew a little bit more, but you still had all these blind spots as to how the system was working. So having a navigation aid to help people go through the system and here's the kind of the steps, or at least the stages that you need to go through, would be immensely helpful. And you add to that people who are immigrating to Canada, let's say, who are not familiar with the healthcare system, where they're really looking for some additional support in terms of understanding the big picture, but then also understanding the details. Here's the forms you got to fill out. Here's where you got to send them in. That would be immensely valuable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to have to cut it short there, but let's give a huge round of applause to Wade. Wade, thank you so much for being the guinea pig for this. I think this is a beautiful example of, like, regardless of wherever you're at on this journey for creating change in the world, there are amazing talents in the room, in the city, that can help move your idea into reality. And so part of the Soul of the Next Economy Forum is to bring collisions between all these different people so that hopefully we do see more of this beautiful magic and change happen. I'm going to quickly round up with one last question for all three of you. Can you pose out one challenge to everyone in attendance today? And then we'll wrap it up with that. Jared, I think you look like you're ready to go. Yeah, you got a thing.
I think I would implore everyone to reflect on the world we are in and the world that you hope to see one day, and how you're going to get there. I mean, we all inherit the conditions of our existence, but that doesn't mean we can't change them. I didn't pick my family. I didn't pick to be born in Calgary. Just like none of us picked to be born into this socio-political and economic climate. These are things that we've all inherited. But what I would really ask is for you to start flipping the script, maybe. We've inherited an understanding that work is X. Work is that we give primacy to the holders of capital, always. And this is just a taken for granted assumption that we all hold. Somebody comes in, we don't care where they got that money from, they build an industry, and now it's their right and responsibility to appropriate all value produced in that industry. And that, to me, is an unjust reality that does not have to be as such. Again, using a restaurant as a simple example, somebody builds a restaurant, but the people you interact with in the restaurant on the daily probably aren't the owners. The person who's designing the menu has brought their years of intellectual capital and skill to design this menu that you are now eating. The person who designed the bar menu has brought years of experience bartending to both entertain you and create delicious drinks and serve you. Your server is the person you are interacting with at every step. They are the face of this restaurant. All of these people have brought fundamental value to this industry, yet the only person who decides what's done with that value is the person who brought the initial capital. Maybe we should start looking at the fact that maybe that person should reclaim the initial capital, but at what point do we begin to recognize the true value that everyone's bringing to that table? I ask you all to really think about that and maybe sell all your businesses to your workers if you have one.
Yes. Just aligns that in at the end. Love it.
That's also a really good point. Like the cost of employee turnover. The cost of employee turnover is huge. You can go online and put this into a calculator. What's the cost of employee turnover to your business? It's massive.
Yeah.
If you create loyalty, if you create ownership with your employees, you lose that. And if you make them your equal, then you're not a terrible human anymore. That's great.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move it on to Joy and just one challenge, please, Joy. Just one.
How do I sell a nonprofit? In my head, I was just putting neurodiversity or autism.
Yeah, totally.
It works, yeah. But I would say for those of you who are thinking of starting off in a social entrepreneurship, really research where there's a need and think about some unique ways that you can fill it. So we say to our business clients a lot of times that you might hire us to do good, but you're going to keep us because we are good.
Nice.
And think about that for what you're doing.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Short and sweet.
Thank you. Rob, take us home.
visit a Fresh Fruits Mobile grocery store? No.
Fresh
Yeah, freshfruits.ca. Check it out. Spelt routes. Read one book on social entrepreneurship and like the solutions economy is one thing. Like you can't learn if you're just like just starting to think about this world. Sean Loney, who's next, great Canadian example. He's written a couple books on it. One's called The Army of Problem Solvers. Just giving examples of people who, wanted to redefine the role of business in our society, or redefine the role of enterprise, and really thinking about let's build systems that maximize return for communities, for your neighbor, and not maximize shareholder value return. And how that comes about is Jared or us or nonprofits or different people, and everybody's trying to do it, but we're all under that same umbrella that we can build systems that provide value for everybody and not for select few, because the systems that we currently have built benefit disproportionately a very, very, very small percentage of people. And it's because of the design of the system. And so, maybe it is a worker cooperative. Maybe, there's a whole landscape out there of opportunity. And so I just pick one and just read it. And just, if anything's ever changed how I think about something, it's doing a deep dive into somebody who tackled one of these issues. So
awesome.
That'd be my ask.
Fantastic. And so on all three of these notes, I challenge all of you to go onto Dialogue Loop. For this particular session, there's a survey question that says, what are you going to do differently as a result of being a part of this panel discussion? So I challenge all of you to put that information in Dialogue Loop. And at the end of today, at the end of Sean Loney's, spoiler alert, at the end of Sean Loney's, we're also going to task you with the same thing. What are you going to do now? So again, let's turn these ideas into action, and hopefully you found this panel as inspiring as I have. Let's give a huge applause to these three. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Thanks, guys. That was awesome. Thank you. No problem.